What's up, fellas? In the second video of the day, we're going to be talking about the NBA MVP race, but in a bit of a different way. I think we've all kind of established mentally the contenders for the MVP. For me personally, Jokic is at the top, and Embiid is making a run for it again as he is now fully healthy. There's some guys lingering, like Giannis potentially, but we're going to talk about Steph in this video because I don't think Steph's getting enough love for the season that he's having, and in comparison to some of his past MVP seasons, you could argue, why are we not talking about Steph Curry as a possible, or maybe even likely, MVP candidate for this season. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload twice a day, every single day on this channel, so it's the most consistent NBA content on YouTube. If you're new here, by the way, what's up? My name is Tucker. You can also leave a like rating on the videos as well, and you can check me out at various socials in a Linktree link down in the description below. With those things said, let's talk about Steph. So, the idea here is, why are we not considering Steph as an MVP candidate? And first you're thinking, well, those reasons are obvious, Tuck. Well, are they? And are we really evaluating the MVP properly? Because Steph is having maybe the quietest, most underrated season in the league, because his numbers, they don't make any sense, okay? So he's played 47 games. He's scoring over 30 points per game. 6 assists per game, a little bit lower than one of his former MVP seasons. The three-point shooting stuff is out of this world, and when you consider the efficiency of all of this in the context of the players that Steph has around him, you could make the argument that this is the greatest season that Steph has ever played. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying you could make the argument for his scoring average to be above anything it's ever been, for his percentages to still be where they are, despite having to play with Draymond, who is, a great defensive player, but is completely fallen apart offensively. James Wiseman is now out for more than likely the season, but it's not like he was helping them out a ton offensively. Obviously, still very raw. Clay is hurt. Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins are out there running around with Steph, and it is Steph or bust every single time down the floor for Golden State. There's so much, an incredible amount of offensive responsibility on Steph just for the Warriors to be able to have a competent offensive possession every single time down the floor. There is no safety valve. There is no other guy on the floor that can create offense for them off the dribble. It is literally just Steph. And he's still having this good of a season to the point where you could make the argument that he should be in the MVP conversation. And again, most of those names are either Jokic, who for me right now would win the MVP if the season ended today. We'll kind of see what happens with them now post Jamal Murray injury. Embiid was the front runner before he got hurt. Now that he's back, he is absolutely making a run at this thing. We'll see if he can sustain that. Then, maybe there's some Giannis buzz in there, and then Steph. Now, the obvious counter to this is what? We talked about this in pretty much every MVP video I ever do. You pretty much have to be like a top 2 or 3 record in your conference to win the MVP. That's just kind of how it is. Jokic has a outside shot at that, but because of how good of a season he's had, he's a little bit exempt from that. Embiid and Giannis are both going to be top 3 in their conference. Steph's not even going to be close. They might not even legitimately make the playoffs. They might have to play in the play-in game. They're just quite simply not a very good team, and especially outside of Steph, they are probably one of the worst rosters in the league outside of Steph. And so people are generally way, way more hesitant to reward a player for with an MVP if their team is not near the top of the standings, with the exception being Russell Westbrook when the Thunder were the 5th seed, which in comparison to not even making the playoffs in a normal season potentially for Golden State, obviously that's a significant gap. But the question is, how much should you consider, okay, yeah, they might only be the 8th seed, 7th seed, best case for Golden State, right? But if they didn't have Steph, they might have the worst record in the league, right? So how much should you consider, well, let's say you take Steph away from this team, where would they be? Maybe just Steph's presence and how good of a season he's having has elevated them from the 13th best record in the West up to the 7th. That's significant, right? Whereas, let's say that you took Embiid off the Sixers. Did they go from the first best record in the East all the way down to the 8th best? Probably not, right? They're obviously not nearly as good, and I'm not even saying that any of this is true, by the way. I'm just talking this out. I'm just trying to make the argument one way or the other, right? And so if you really want to narrow it down to who's most valuable to their team, which again is what the award is named after, whether that's how you evaluate it or not, you could make the argument that Steph lifts his team up more than any other guy in the league, given the incredible lack of talent around Steph there in Golden State. And I don't think you would be wrong to make that argument. Now, I've said it multiple times in this video, I would have Jokic as my MVP, and I would probably have Embiid second right now. But I don't think you can argue that Steph is having an MVP caliber season because, again, if you go back and look at some of the seasons in which he won the MVP, statistically, the production is either way, way higher this year in the instance of his first MVP or pretty much on par in the instance of his second MVP. Now, granted, the Warriors were the best team in the league those 2 times that he won the MVP, and that is obviously not the case this time. But again, considering the injury stuff, it is a pretty incredible season. And I think you could make the argument that, like, let's just say Klay never gets hurt, right? And they come in the year, they've got Steph, Klay, Wiggins, Oubre, Draymond, Wiseman, whatever, the whole deal. And the Warriors were like the 4th seed. If Steph was putting up these numbers, granted, I don't know if he would be putting up these numbers if Klay was out there on the floor, we would be having a much, much bigger conversation about Steph as the MVP. If they were up towards the 4th and 5th seed, if Klay was healthy. Granted, no guarantee they'd be up there if Klay was healthy, and again, the statistical stuff would go down. But that doesn't change necessarily the season that Steph is having currently and the impact that he has on his team in terms of the overall value that he provides, which again, if you're considering the most valuable player, then Steph should be coming into that conversation, right? Now, what I want to know down in the comment section is 2 things. 1, do you think Steph is a legitimate MVP candidate? Do you think he's a guy that is going to receive votes as an MVP candidate? He's a top 3 guy right now, in your opinion. I want to know that. 2, if he is or isn't, do you think that's as a result of a misevaluation of what the MVP should be? Are we just rewarding the guy that's having the best season on one of the best teams in the league? Because traditionally, that's what it's been. Not that there haven't been guys that have or have not deserved it. We can go into historical MVP conversations if you want to, but not in this video. Different video. If you guys want to see that, let me know down in the comment section. But is it a problem that team success is weighed so much within the MVP conversation? Because in contrast to things like the Rookie of the Year or the Defensive Player of the Year, it can still be very clear the value and the impact that a player has as an MVP candidate, even if their team isn't in position to win 50 to 60 games in a normal 82-game regular season, but they're still providing a ton of value. Even if that isn't necessarily indicated in a super high overall record, they're still pushing what their record should have been higher than what you would have expected it to be as a result of their contribution. So basically what I'm saying is, should the structure of a good team, of a top level team, be necessary, be the foundation of an MVP candidacy? Because the way that we currently evaluate the MVP, you can't win the MVP if you don't have a really good team around you. It just doesn't work that way, right? You have to be winning, again, in a normal 82-game regular season, 50-plus games most of the time as a team in order to win the MVP. So you could have the best individual season in the league, but if your surrounding team just isn't that great, you might win 42 games, right? And you're not in contention. Is that a mistake? Is that a flaw? Or do you think we're doing it all right? And we should be valuing team success, and we should be valuing the foundation around, because that allows you to further properly evaluate 2 things. 1, how much they're actually elevating their team because they're in the proper circumstance that allows you to really evaluate them. And 2, this idea that, this is the Russell Westbrook thing. If you are on a team that is worse, it is easier to accumulate statistics that show value in a way that isn't necessarily making you the most valuable. So value being statistics, value being on paper value, rather than the elevation of your team and of your teammates that you're talking about, going from like the 8th seed to the 5th seed because of your presence on the team. That's not necessarily the case. It's just your statistical value is increasing as a result of not having great teammates around you, in contrast to being on a good team and being able to exist on a good team while also raising the value of the other players around you because of your own value, and ultimately creating an MVP candidacy for yourself. Those are kind of the 2 cases, right? It's either you're just looking at, regardless of context, how much you elevating your team, how much value do you provide to your team in terms of elevation, or how much value are you providing to a team that is already good to make them great and ultimately making them contenders. At the end of the day, it's always going to be more skewed to this side. It's always going to be more skewed towards guys that are winning a lot of games, and that is necessitated by having a great foundation around you already. But the question is, should that be? And if they shouldn't, then Steph absolutely should be a main MVP candidate. With all those things said, I don't think there's any chance that Steph is actually going to win the MVP this year, but I do think it's a conversation that we need to be having a little bit more about, just because he's having an awesome season. And apart from the nights when he's shooting crazy numbers from three, I don't really know that we're talking about Steph a ton. Some of you might have been surprised to even find out that he's averaging over 30 points a game in this season. He's been awesome. We need to talk about him a little bit more, as well as kind of the conversation around the MVP as a whole. And that was kind of the point of this video. But yeah, that's going to be the end of the second video of the day, and I thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like it down, underneath the video. You can check out more boxes from me on the boxes on screen. You can check out more videos from me as well as on the channel as a whole. And yeah, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your Thursday, and I will see you all next time.